Hello, this is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club Q A number 2. Dan Patchy, that's DanPachi, asked me, Rick, do you have a place you like to go? Or any place you like to go but can't for any reason? My answer, for the most part, I go where I like. However, I have noticed that there are certain time periods where some sort of barrier prevents my visiting. I have no further explanation for that particular phenomena, though. There just seems to be blocks set up, and you cannot project through those. You have to go around them. No explanation for that. I like to go into space. I like to travel into the future. I like to explore different civilizations here on Earth and in space. Those are some of the things I enjoy doing. What I really enjoy doing, to be honest with you, it's not fancy, but I like flying through the night sky, flying through clouds, especially ones that are laden with moisture or are getting ready to have an electrical storm. They're very invigorating. I also enjoy flying along a beach where there's a good rapid waves coming in. Flying over that area is also very refreshing. And I know it might have something to do with the negative ions that are created in situations like where you have the water hitting the sand, for instance. Now, what are some of the places that I can't or I don't like to go? The first is graveyards. I stay away from graveyards at all costs because grief saturates them. They also tend to be vibrating very low, and sometimes there's a few very grief stricken spirits hovering or standing by their own graves. It's very, very depressing. Many times I have flown over a graveyard, I've seen it, and all of a sudden my vibrational level falls so quickly because of that area that I fall out of the sky. It's not pleasant. I try to stay away from those areas at all costs. The second is high voltage power stations. I believe the electromagnetic areas there act like flypaper, and they can grab an unwary astral projector. I assume the astral body then must have some sort of electromagnetic properties in order for this phenomena to occur. It's been years since I was caught like that. I remember it felt like being stuck to flypaper, and I actually had to go back to my body in order to get out of that mess. Next question, and this is written by Smartly Pretty. Do you see people over there, I assume the astral, who aren't here anymore? Do you think it's harder for a person to leave their body if they're adjusting to a person's death? That's a very, very good question. Yes, of course, I see people who have passed over. In the lower astral, quite often there are people who've just passed over and they're preparing to go onwards. There are people who are very vibrating very low. That maybe they didn't have any beliefs about afterlife. They're still very much attracted to the physical. They're trying to get back into their damaged or dead body. Or there's somebody who was addicted to alcohol or drugs, and they're trying to trying to go to bars and trying to get the feeling of being inebriated from the people there. I have a theory that one of the reasons why fights happen in bars and people do things they wouldn't otherwise do is, yes, of course, the alcohol is lowering their judgment level. But I believe there also may, in some cases, be an astral component that because of these drugs you're subjecting yourself to, you're allowing your protective threshold to lower somewhat, in that someone can perhaps whisper some ideas into your head that you end up following up because of your poor judgment. Personally, I avoid places like bars like the plague as well. Lastly, um, should you avoid projecting when you've just experienced a loss? I would say yes for the most part, because when I when people ask me, should I astral project, my questions are generally, are you healthy, both physically and psychologically? If you are, and you're in a good place emotionally, then I say yes, absolutely astral project. In the physical, we know that like attracts like. If you're a very negative person at work, you tend to attract other negative people at work, for instance. If you're a positive person, you tend to attract those types of people in the physical as well. Now, the astral is very much a mirror image, or very like the physical in many, many instances. This is one of them. If you are feeling depressed, if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling very sick and very weak, you will attract other entities that are vibrating in similar ways. So don't ask to project when you're not feeling at your best. When you've suffered a loss, in many cases your emotions are swinging all over the place, and this is natural. I'm not advocating that you should try to suppress that. What I am advocating, though, is perhaps avoiding astral projection, because do you want to attract other energies who are feeling as depressed as you are? Is that what you need at this point in time? Lastly, I am always very wary about why somebody wants to astral project after they've experienced a loss. There's there are people who are such deep mourning that they're considering crossing over themselves, and I would never want to be part of a suicide attempt. On the other end of things, there are astral spirits, some of which might have some power to them, and they're trying to come back to the physical, or they're trying to interact with the physical. Perhaps they were very controlling type individuals in the past, and they're trying to control the physical. I believe that both of these actions, the physical trying to control or interact with the astral in a negative way, and the astral trying to affect or interact with the physical in a negative way, are both very destructive, which is one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of these ghost talking machines either. First of all, the only type of spirit that would talk to you through these things is a very low vibrating one. Believe me, they don't have any special knowledge. They're not going to tell you anything you want to hear or you should be hearing. But it also, I think, gets you. I've had a few people I've talked to who become obsessed with these machines. They run home from work, and that's all they do for hours is listen for little whispers of information from these lower vibrating entities. I don't like being judgmental, but if people ask me about those things, I say put them away. Don't buy them. This is not this is not a font of knowledge. You're not going to gain wisdom from the people who are communicating to you from the astral through these boxes. It's a it's a waste of time, and potentially it's dangerous. Okay, the next question I want to answer is time travel. What's it like and how has it changed you? And this comes from Cylon Solutions. I believe that wherever I go, I'm traveling in another dimension. In essence, that's what some of these futures are, for instance. When I fast forward as I'm going into the future, all of these things that we think of as permanent flash before my eyes. They grow up, and then they disappear and they wither and die. I see buildings going up, I see other buildings coming down. I see fields turning into developments and then back into fields again. When I do very long astral projections. I wink out of consciousness and I come back. And if it's 100,000 years in the future or 500 million years in the future, I'm confronted with a very different Earth, a very different scene. How that's affected me is I've noticed that a lot of humans, we have this arrogance, that this illusion of permanence, that what we see around us is always going to be there, that our mighty civilization is, of course, always going to be here. And because we are the greatest thing that has ever been created, and we will always, always be here. I've seen this now as an illusion. I no longer subscribe, consciously or unconsciously, to this particular belief system. What has also changed for me is I've noticed that all that really matters is not buildings, is not physical wealth, all these things that we chase after in this lifetime. What's real to me are the people in my life, my wife, my daughter, my family. This is what's real. These are astral souls. These are spirits that inhabit these bodies that are permanent. They are the thing that matters. Everything else decays, disappears, gets transmuted into something else. It's not important and it's not real. And that's how I've been changed by time travel. Next question. Wave Monkey asks, I've had some experiences in the lower part of the astral that parallels the physical world. It's really dense. It's like trying to navigate in quicksand. How exactly do you deal with it, and what's the best way to get out of it? The lower astral vibrates very close to the physical plane. Because of that, the feelings in your astral body can be very heavy. You can feel as if you're actually still in your physical body. Even some of your senses feel like they're still there. The ones that typically don't matter anymore, like hearing, for instance. You may hear things because you're vibrating so close to the physical that it feels like you're still alive in your physical body, for instance. Now, I have a theory that people who pass over quickly, in many cases, may not even know they've passed, because if they're vibrating so low that they're still hanging out at a car crash scene, for instance, their body may have a solidity to it that doesn't give them the clue that maybe I've passed on. So how do you get out of this? What I do, what I've always done for many years now, is I get out of my house as quickly as possible, because you want to get at least 20 yards or 20 meters from your physical body as quickly as possible so that you can avoid being retracted. And once I get outside, I launch myself into the sky. I tend to fly like Superman. It's not necessary, however you want to do it. But once you launch yourself into the sky, you have raised your vibrations. If you have some difficulty, think joyous thoughts, not overwhelmingly joyous, because strong emotion can sometimes be interpreted as threat by your astral self-defense mechanism, and you'll be withdrawn back into your body again. But what I call controlled joy, that will help you to raise your vibrations and then launch you into the sky. Once you're flying, you're well outside of the reach of anything in the lower astral, because the lower astral can't fly, and for the most part doesn't even know that that's possible. Let's do another question. Okay, here's one. This is by MDM 5382. If you could travel to the future like that, wouldn't that mean that the future was already recorded and set in stone? I have answered that before. The future, there are many futures. We decide which one we want to make real as a race. So, yes, you could travel into the future and still preserve free will. Let's do one last question I get asked about on a regular basis. Rick, have you ever had sex? If so, what's it like? I guess, of course, they're talking about astral sex. And then, by the way, this was a Zelda Lover 503. Okay, astral sex. First of all, let's disabuse everyone of the notion of what it's like in the physical. The physical, there's a lot of very real physical interaction that's going on. A lot of parts exhibiting all manners of motion and friction. That's not what happens in astral sex, if you want to use that term. What you're doing on the astral, if you find an individual who you trust so implicitly that you're willing to engage in this activity with them, is you are merging your beings, yourself. You are sharing your intimate emotions, thoughts, feelings, memories with this person. You are merging yourselves. In that instant, you feel whole. You feel everything that they ever felt. For a portion of time, you're not just Rick anymore, you're also Evelyn or whoever you're merging with. It's difficult for a period of time to remember what it was like just to be you. You have all of this flooding into you, and they, in return, are learning all about you, becoming you. You can tell somebody a story all day long, but if you can actually give them these memories as if they live them themselves, which is what's happening in an astral merging process, well, that's a whole nother level of intimacy. So, is this something that I've done? Yes. Before I was married, before I met my wife, I did engage in this activity several times with entities that I had met and had gotten to know to a good extent. This is not, they're also very high vibrating entities. They had previous Earth lifetimes. You'll find that anyone who hasn't had a previous Earth lifetime is not going to be all that eager to merge with some Earth type being who's just kind of vacationing outside of their body on the astral for a bit. You're going to have to slum with your fellow Earth people. But you got to be very careful. This is not an activity. I mean, if you wouldn't feel comfortable bearing your entire soul, your entire life story to just anyone in this physical lifetime, then you need to be every bit as careful in the astral. In the physical, sometimes we think of sex, especially when you're single, as just this brief activity that perhaps you can enjoy and then walk away, no strings attached. Once you have this reality, once you share this experience with this other entity, you are connected to them by a thin filament that has a reality to it forever now. It's a long-term commitment. It's about the longest term commitment that you can make. So that's astral sex, and that's something I wanted to address because I get the question on a regular basis. That is Q&A number 2. If you enjoyed Q&A number 2, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so that you'll get all future notifications when I post more Q&A videos and when I post other astral projection videos as well. I'm Rick, and I'll be seeing you on the astral plane.